to order. Notice is hereby given of a regular meeting of the City of San Angelo Development Corporation to be held on February 22nd, 2023 at 8:30 a.m. at the East Mezzanine City Hall, 72 West College Avenue, San Angelo, Texas, for the purpose of considering the following agenda items. We will call the meeting to order. And Director Mantuf, will you please lead us in prayer?
Would you please bow your heads with me? Father God, we come to you humble people today. As we gather around this table of leadership, we ask that your wisdom be in everything that we discuss today. Bless the conversations to the greater good. We pray all this in your most holy name. Amen.
Amen. All right. 3 public comment. Issues or items that are not on the agenda may be raised by the public at this time. Citizens should speak from the podium. Begin by stating their name and limit remarks to less than 3 minutes. Board members may request that a discussed item be placed on a future agenda. The board takes public comment on all regular agenda items during the discussion of those items. Do we have any public comment?
All right, morning, Costa DC Board. This is Michael Looney. I'm with Chamber of Commerce, VP of Economic Development. Wanted to report that yesterday Bob Schneeman and I went and visited Rosenberger over at their new facility. This is the company from Pennsylvania with headquarters over in Germany. And we met with the new production manager there. They've got a small staff that's already started working on several of their projects. They've got, I think, like 4 of the calibration and assembly machines up and operational. A lot more wrapped in plastic and in boxes all throughout their warehouse. So it's coming along. It looks really good. The nice thing is that the video that I showed you with the pictures of their facility in Hungary, actually that's what this facility is starting to look like. And so it's a very clean facility. Really neat to see. We met the production manager. He's from Hungary. He's actually from that facility that was in that video. And he's very excited about what they're seeing here in San Angelo. He feels very welcome. And they're off and running. So I just wanted to give you that report. Bob, did you have anything else to add on that tour?
No, it was just nice to see that that they are actually starting production, even though they're still moving in, but they've already started production. And like Michael said, you know, we recognize some of the machines that they were using from the video that we had seen and some of the product that we had seen from the video. So it was good to see.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do we have any other public comment? No? Well, I wanted to take just a quick second. He's not here, but I did want to publicly congratulate Dave Erickson for his service and his successful retirement, 24 years that he's been here. And I've known him personally for over 10 years, so before me coming on board Costa DC, and just wanted to publicly thank him and acknowledge him for his years of service and all he's done for the SPC. So,
You want to talk about it?
all right, we'll move on. Do you have anything? Michael, anything? All right, we're good? Okay. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Item A, consider approving the necessary corporation disbursements. B, consider approving the January 25th, 2023 meeting minutes. And C, consider approving the January 2023 financials. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, we have a first by Director Ceballos. Do we have a second? Second by Director Mantuf. Do we have any discussion?
I just have one question on the minutes versus the current agenda. Project Sienna, I'm seeing spelled with S's and C's. Which is the correct?
It is with an S, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other discussion? No? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to the regular agenda. A, consider approving 2022 business plan competition winner, Bearded Barista, to amend the use of $20,000 towards equipment purchase. Presentation by Nora Navarez.
Morning, Board. Nora Navarez, Economic Development Assistant. Today, I'm going to present to you about Bearded Barista. They were our second place winner for the business plan competition. They had placed second, which was $20,000 in their award, and they came and visited with me and asked if what they proposed on their business plan was to purchase a trailer so that they could be mobile and sell their coffee. Well, now they have a better opportunity, and that is to be at a steady location downtown So they're asking for board's permission that, approvals, that they use that money to purchase the equipment that they're needing at their location. So I think it's a great opportunity for them because they're still continuing the expansion of their
So it's
business.
just another form of equipment.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah, because it was a food truck, right, originally. So,
My question is, would this have changed the outcome of the competition if the business plan included equipment instead of a trailer?
No, I mean, it is an expansion, and so that's how we try to go
Okay.
with the competition.
Do we have a staff recommendation on that?
Staff recommendation is that we approve it, and so that's what we're
I'll
hoping
make
for.
the motion that we approve.
okay, we have first by Director Barrios, second by Director Ceballos. Any other discussion? Do we need to open this to public comment? Yeah. Okay. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Nora. B, update regarding the Economic Development Director position and search process, presentation by Michael Dane.
Good morning, Board. Michael Dane, Interim Economic Development Director. Spoke with the search firm on Friday. He said that right now, they have a group of applicants. They are gathering background documents and doing background checks. And he anticipated that they would have a group for us to consider in 3 weeks. And so it's moving right along. He thought he had good candidates. And maybe by the time we meet again, we'll have some interviews scheduled. That's our hope.
All right.
Any questions? All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. We'll move on to C, discussion and possible action regarding the proposed revisions to the Coastal DC bylaws, presentation by Brandon Dyson.
Okay, passing around a new revision to the bylaws. Our bylaws review committee met again, and we tried to establish what the number one priority for the bylaws were in light of the council denial. So what we came up with was that the purchasing authority was probably the most meaningful change that we needed to happen. And so you'll see in the new bylaws that got passed around, pretty much all the prior changes that dealt with anything other than purchasing have been removed. I think I have a couple like numbering corrections that I left in. But I guess starting on Article 1, Section 4G is the first change. This is just a minor change where I added the article reference. I think there were a couple comments at council that it wasn't clear when an exception applied, so put the article reference to Article 5 there. And then moving on to Section 5C of the next page, simply, again, moved what was a sentence, that line you see underlined. It was at the end of that paragraph. I moved it within the paragraph so it was clear that it applied to that whole paragraph. And that's just setting out exceptions to council approval for contracts. On the next page, Section 8, subsection 2, this is mostly the same as what you've seen last time. The only addition was what's now 2.4. And I think there was a comment at council about concerns with if we have these purchasing limits, but then what if you make a bunch of little purchases and that exceeds those limits even though one single purchase doesn't? Well, there's rules that apply to municipalities anyways about bidding, and it says you can't do that. So the number 4, I put pretty much the standard for municipalities in bidding situations to apply in our scenario where we couldn't go over those limits. So.
Okay, and to that point, because we're kind of, this policy mirrors other departments within the city. So there's checks and balances already in place for that kind of thing, I would assume.
Yeah, so, I mean, normally, the purchases will go to the purchasing department, and they vet those, and if they see you're making small purchases that could really be made in bulk or typically would be made in a single purchase, I mean, yeah, they'll definitely flag that, and in legal, we also get the contracts after purchasing has vetted them, so we review those as well. Questions on that one? That's one of two big changes. And all the way back to page 10, the new Article 5 for the executive director that we previously had. We had an appointment process where there was some board participation in that. We removed that and just simply left it as the executive director will be the economic development director of the city. We say he will carry out the day-to-day business of the corporation. And then that next section 2 is just limited to the same purchasing provision we had for the 25,000. So. And that provision is the same.
Okay. And the thought behind that, just for the general public, was to not have to tie the, future executive director to a, coastal DC board approval or city council approval for, day-to-day business operations. I remember, I think a few months ago, we had an issue with the roof and some repairs that, or flooding or something that needed to be done, and it might have been $1,500 or something to that extent, and we had to tie up, resources or wait until actual meeting to do that when that doesn't make any business sense to do that.
I mean, now it would have to go to the board and then to council after that, so
Right.
potentially 2 months to do a little
To do
roof
some
leak
sheetrock
repair or something.
Right, so that's kind of the precipice of kind of looking at all of this, is obviously from past experience is trying to become more efficient.
Exactly.
Okay.
And those are the changes we had, so if you have any questions or...
Any feedback?
I'd just like to comment from the participation in the Bylaws Review Committee that we've narrowed these changes down from the extensive changes that were previously proposed, essentially taking this evolution one bite at a time so that we're focused and everyone can see that this is simply bringing the purchasing practices and the executive director position in line with what's consistent in the city side with any director in the city. Am I right in that characterization?
Yeah, that's correct.
And that is a corporation who uses the city as their administrative services contractor. That's just appropriate, keeping it simple for finance. And I see Michael Dane is shaking his head yes, with a long history in finance. And that's just for the clarity of the public. Thank you very much.
And I think, prior to this, it had been several years since these bylaws were reviewed. So I would think maybe in going forward, we may want to put something in for future agenda item or whatever, but maybe to review it again, maybe in about a 2-year timeframe.
Yeah, I think last time was 2019, so. I think
Okay,
that-
so about 4 years, so
Yeah.
maybe every 2, just to look at maybe some cleanup every other year or something, might be good business practice.
Are you saying that in general on the whole bylaws review or just on this section of the bylaws?
On the entire bylaws.
Okay.
Be good to look at it with, just to maybe a review every 2 years, and we could at that time decide if this change is needed or not, but I think, instead of, approving it, putting it in a file somewhere, not looking at it for another 4 years, maybe it's good to look at it every 2 years.
Sure.
Okay. So, do we need to take any public comment on this?
Yeah, I would take public comment.
Okay.
Do
Is
we
there
need a
any?
motion first?
Yeah, you could also take a motion and second and then.
Okay.
public
I'll
comment.
make the motion that we approve.
Okay. We have it. First by Director Barrio. Do we have a second? Second by Director Mantuf. Okay. Do we have any public comment at this time? No? Any other discussion from the board?
Question, suggestion that bylaws be reviewed every 2 years, is that a part of the motion, or is that just advisory?
Advisory, yeah. Just for future boards or future, meetings down the road, we could put it on the calendar and know to look at it instead of looking at it like, hey, it's been 4 years since we've looked at it. Be a little proactive, in my opinion.
Max, if I could, one of the discussions we had in the subcommittee meeting was the harmony between the bylaws and the staff's or the city services agreement. And so it might not be 2 years before we revisit the bylaws. If in review of the city services agreement, we find that a bylaws update is appropriate given an amendment or update to the city services agreement, we may revisit those sooner than that. I think where Brandon left us was that the two work hand in hand in some respects, and to the extent that they need to be consistent or complementary, we may need to update these again later, sooner than 2 years.
Oh, yeah, no, and that's just good business. Okay.
Well, and that was basically why I was asking the question. I didn't want to tie us down to only being able to look at this every 2 years.
All right.
Seems to me that we need to be more agile than that.
Absolutely, yeah, that to me, kind of my head was more of a minimum. If there isn't a cause to look at it within the next 2 years, then at least at a minimum of 2 years. But of course, if something comes up that we need to clean it up, we need to.
Yeah, that we could have interpreted your 2 years as we should not let it go longer than 2 years, or I don't want to see it again for 2 years.
No. The first, not the second, yeah. Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, so any other discussion, feedback from the board? If not, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move to item D. Consider authorizing the board president to negotiate and execute Amendment 1 to the 2023 Coastal DC Chamber of Commerce Professional Services Agreement with ratification by the City Council. Presentation by Michael Dane.
Good morning, Michael Dane, Interim Economic Development Director. We were charged with, upon approval of the chamber agreement, we were charged with bring back an updated proposal for an updated scope of services. We had a couple of meetings and discussed that, and the group was in the same mind that the council was, that the scope should be, there should be fewer items in the scope, and it should be updated accordingly. We worked through that and pretty much had it worked out. And I did review the draft that we're going to talk about today with the mayor to make sure that we weren't leaving anything out that she thought was a priority. And the only thing that she added was a request to be informed, that the board should be informed if through the COSA DC contract, the chamber hired a consultant or an additional employee, that should be something the board should be made aware of. So we have vetted, we've talked before about how do we propose and approve items which will be well received by council. I did go to that step and visit with the mayor on this item, so I think we were good with her as of 4:30 yesterday. And so I'll go through that, and then we'll go from there. So in the proposed updated scope, I wonder if it'd be better if you had a copy of this to follow along with me. Was this file attached, these files attached to?
I have an Exhibit A. is
You
what
do
I
have them?
Yes, scope of services.
Okay,
Does everyone have that?
the updated proposal?
I
You
believe
do
so.
have them?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right, so required services, number one, maintain a cross-branded website. We want the cities or the COSA DC website to be consistent with the chamber website. The things we say should be the same about economic development. We think that's very achievable. Part of the contract we just approved with our marketing group involves an update to the Costa DC website, and we think consistency between the two websites is going to be very easy to achieve. Second item, provide professional economic development, marketing, and recruiting services. That pretty much speaks for itself. Item number 3 is about BREP. Chamber will evaluate the local business eligibility under the BREP program and coordinate where opportunities exist. Number 4, coordinate responses to all prospect leads. That speaks for itself. They do that and have done that for years. Number 5, maintain current community information. That generating the information and then having it available on the website is also reflects back to item number 1. We want that information gathered, presented, and we want it to be consistent between the two websites. We think that's also very achievable. The what information is gathered and presented will change based on ideas that we have to update that or move with trends. So we have not been specific about all of the data that we would ask them to maintain. Number 6, provide background information for any projects. That's consistent with what they have been doing. When a prospect, when they are talking to a prospect, we'll see that in executive session. They both provide to the prospect information about the community, and then as we discuss the prospect, as we will in executive session, they provide us with background on the prospect. So their job is to help them learn about us and us learn about them being prospects. Provide Costa DC staff a summary of impact. There's a lot there, but what impact have their efforts provided to the community? We do want that because we want to be able to measure and communicate the effectiveness of the contract. Number 8, ensure a chamber representative attends regular Costa DC meetings. That's pretty straightforward. They've been great about that, and any other meetings that we would request them to participate in, they've been good about that too. One of the things we've worked in is performance measures. And so moving on to that section, we want them to track website activity and use that data to improve the web presence. And of course, we'll be asking for their thoughts on our website also, since we want those to be consistent and complementary. Number 2, meet with Economic Development Director prior to presenting to the board. For activities related to economic development, so that we can be in good shape when we present to the board or to the council, and when we develop a strategy and present that. So number 3, track response rates, conversion rates, inquiries, leads generated. They have a system that they use that's going to make that easy. I think they do similar kinds of reporting to their board. So we would just like that reporting made available to this board.
It's on the dashboard. You should have you guys on access.
Sounds good. 4, provide monthly written reports related to leads generated, including sources. They are reporting more frequently than that, but we think monthly is the threshold that we would ask for. But at this point, we don't have a problem with them providing more frequent reports. Number 5, present quarterly oral and written reports on outcomes, activities, and expenditures relating to Costa DC contracted services. One of the things that we just recently started was we had our first quarterly meeting on the DMO contract between the city and the chamber. And it was very productive, in my opinion, to have those stakeholders sit down at the table, discuss what the strategies and efforts were, what the results were, and what the attempts were going to be going forward. I think that a similar kind of meeting for this board and chamber representatives, and I would think that maybe an invitation to a couple of council representatives would go a long way toward understanding what all the stakeholders' positions were and understanding what their motives and expectations are. And we have talked before about how do we improve and the understanding between this board and the city council. And I think that kind of a quarterly meeting is an opportunity for that to occur. Obviously, everybody has to participate and be a willing participant in that. But I think number 5, the quarterly oral and written reports, is a good way to fulfill more than just the objective of reporting to this board. And
Michael, if
Yes,
you
sir.
don't, may I?
please do, please.
I started to ask if I could interrupt, but I just did. Language is a big deal to me.
Sure.
I would suggest that up there in number 8 in required services, and I know we're getting into committee work here, but what if it were to say provide instead of the monthly, I'm sorry, that's not number 8, number 4, at least, say at least monthly instead of outlining it that it be monthly. Number 4, provide monthly written reports. Might say provide written reports at least monthly.
From a staff perspective, we have no objection. I don't think Michael would have an objective. He's doing more than that anyway. I don't think anybody would object to that.
And then you could also go to the quarterly oral and written reports down there, at least quarterly instead of.
At least in both places.
And the reason that I bring that up is because I mentioned agility a little while ago, and it seems to me that the more specific you are, the more you tie yourself down to only being able to do this. So I like to be able to say this is the expectation, but I also know that if my wife and I didn't talk on a regular basis, we would not be doing well in our relationship. And so I think that the more we talk together, and I love your idea of the quarterly meetings, the more we talk with each other, the better our relationship is going to be. And I think that's vital to both of us achieving what we want for the betterment of the city of San Angelo.
Sounds good. Would you make that note, please? I'm anticipating a motion, and so we'll make that part of a motion if we have one come forward.
Back up where we have invited the chamber executive directors to the COSA DC meetings. Is COSA DC welcome at the monthly economic development meetings?
They absolutely are.
At the chamber? Okay,
Yes.
all right.
I would just say so long as we don't have a quorum going to those meetings, otherwise we'd have to post it like a meeting.
Good note, thank you. I'm done, thanks.
Thank you. Good ideas. Now, what you don't have in front of you is a proposed item number 6. Consultants hired under this contract, whether there would be consultants or employees or temporary employees. We need to work out that language. And I think the item we have is for Max, the authority to Max to negotiate and execute. So we'll work out the details of that language in a way that satisfies legal and board. That in the event the chamber does that, if they hire somebody, for example, if the next time we did a housing study, if we needed to do one, if they did that through our monies or the monies that come from COSA DC, number 6 is an ask to disclose that to us. If they hire somebody or they engage somebody on a particular task, to inform the board, to let them know who they've hired, what their qualifications are, what the cost is, and what the results of the work is. that one, I went over this draft with the mayor, and we talked about many things. That was the one thing she asked for. She said, if the chamber hires somebody, the board should know about that. If they're going to engage somebody to do something, that should be reported to the board.
That would be specific to what we've asked them to do, because we don't want input on if they're hiring somebody to do something outside of economic development, right?
Exactly. It's just related to this contract.
How
Or-
does it work today? How does that situation work today?
Well, we haven't asked specifically to be informed. For example, if Michael were working on railport issues, well, a few years back, we did have that. We hired a consultant, and after he'd completed his work with the city, they hired him for a little while to work on rail issues. Roger. In the case, if they decided, we're going to take the railport from San Angelo Railport to Super Intergalactic Railport, and we just need a little more work from Roger on that. If they hire Roger to do some work for them or to do a study for them, this item would say, please report to the board that you've done that, and what you're going to spend on it, and what results you're asking for and getting.
From my limited experience, they have done that as a matter of courtesy, but I don't think it's ever been spelled out that that's what happens. I don't believe they've ever hired anybody using our money without telling us that that's going on, but I think it's been a matter of courtesy and not a matter of practice.
And that's exactly the way it happened in that example. As Michael told us, hey, we're working with Roger because when we had Roger, we were looking inward. I think when he had Roger, they were looking outward, right? And so.
You brought something up, Rick, that made me think. So is this only pertaining to funds that we get? So if they're not using funds, if they want to hire somebody to do economic development work with their own money that has nothing to do with ours, they would not have to let us know.
Bingo.
Okay, I just want to make clear of that.
So
That's just about this contract.
going back to the housing study that was done in 2019, that we paid for, right? I believe as a Coastal DC board. So the consulting group that was hired to do that, was that, I guess, hired by the chamber to do that
No,
study?
that was all us.
Okay.
So how often does it happen? I'm trying,
I don't think very often.
I'm asking the questions because are we going to just create more rules just to create them? Or I mean, what has happened in the past that's leading up to causing this? Has anybody ever done anything that they shouldn't have done?
I'm not aware of anything. I'm not aware of anything.
If they've done it once or twice in the last 5 years, do we need a rule for it? I mean, these guys are tasked, in my opinion, these guys are tasked with doing a job.
Well,
And
when
it's
we
ours,
just,
and these guys need the tools at their disposal to make the decisions at the speed of business. And if these guys are going to have to come and ask us for, and then virtually ask the council for everything that they're going to do,
They can't do the deals.
they're not going to be able to get these deals done. I mean, the business world doesn't work like that.
I didn't hear that they have to ask our permission to do it. They just need to let us know that they did it.
that they have done it. It's not an ask.
It's not going to be an actionable item that they want to hire a consultant to do this,
That's
that, and the
right.
other.
It was told to me that if they do this, they should report it.
I don't want to create regulation that's going to get in the middle of conducting business, which is what these guys are doing, and these guys are great at it.
And in our discussion, none of that came up. But I know that in discussions about city staffing issues, the mayor is very sensitive about adding to the tax burden, more city employees. So I think that is consistently her mindset, to maintain only the number of city employees that are necessary. And I think that's a routine part of the way she thinks about keeping the tax burden low, is we really should justify the creation of a new position.
But these aren't new positions, right? So that's flawed logic. This is hiring a consultant. It's not hiring a full-time person.
I agree.
That's what I'm asking. Where is this even coming from? This just doesn't make any sense to me.
One of my concerns, and I think we need clarity on this, is I understand that consultants can and probably have been hired by the Chamber of Commerce using funds other than half-cent sales tax economic development funds. I think some of the sources include the Cornerstone investors and others. And whatever language we put in here, I personally would like to see very indisputable clarity that we are only talking about those instances over which COSA DC has a fiduciary responsibility. Any other would be an invasion of the privacy of the Chamber of Commerce as a standalone corporation entity over which neither this corporation nor the city has any legal purview to monitor.
That was the ask, just about this contract. And if I didn't make that clear at the beginning, that's my fault. But it was just about funding that springs from this contract, that if,
To add some clarification, and maybe this will answer your question, Joe, so they can only use the funds for economic development activities currently, right? And they report to us on already what they do? You're just saying that you want a specific line item if they hire consultants, but if they're doing other things, we don't want that. I mean, we've
no,
already
that's
spelled
not what
out
it
those
says. It
terms.
doesn't say we don't want that. It says, please tell us.
Yeah.
But that could be an email.
Yes.
Well, if it's that easy, why is this even a conversation? I just don't understand why it's even coming up. I mean, that is so simple.
I mean, yeah,
Just let the guys go, just let them work.
They already
Just
do
let
a
them go to
monthly
work.
report. It would probably be in the monthly report. That would be my thought, but, I mean,
Well, and there's some question about whether that is even required, because on number 5, present quarterly or written reports on outcomes, activities, and expenditures relating to COSA DC contracted services.
well, that
You know, the-
includes hiring of consultants, right?
Exactly,
Expenditures.
exactly. So the question about whether number 6 is necessary exists, but for whatever reason, that's what she asked that we consider. And when Walt and I talked yesterday at 4:30, he was okay with it. He did call me back later on, and he began talking about a 2-year term. But I didn't get the impression, Michael will have to help us with that the two are related. But anyway, that's the mayor's request, to consider a requirement that they report if they hire another employee or other employees or a consultant out of this funding.
No, I don't think you can call it an employee. Having been a consultant for many years, we were never considered employees. So that is.
Because they're not.
But if but she thinks you should know if they hire an employee from this funding also.
That's okay, that's different. That is a different thing. They're gonna hire an employee. Hiring a consultant is not an employee. I can understand if she says, hey, if you're gonna add a position using these funds, that is a specific full-time position that will be considered an employee. Absolutely, I think I would like to know. But hiring a consultant.
You don't want to
is not
know
an
if they hire a consultant?
I don't.
I don't.
I don't want to know.
You don't want to know?
No, Michael, why would I want to know?
Because it's your job to oversee the expenditure of this money.
We use consultants every single day. They don't all come across my desk. We use different engineers. We have our own staff of engineers all over the country, but at times we do use I don't hear about it because the people that are hiring these folks are tasked with doing a job. That's part of their job. The only thing I care about is the results. The only thing my boss cares about is the results. And at the end of the year, when I'm sitting down with my 2 bosses and we're going over what the year looked like, well, if I made a mistake, I'm going to know about it then, right? My annual review is part of, hey, tell me why you did this if it didn't work out too well. But most of the time it works out pretty well because myself, my staff, and other folks are just being paid to do a job. I'm not trying to go down a rabbit hole here. I'm just saying I don't want to handcuff these guys who are out there selling San Angelo, Texas every single day. And to have them have to tell us everything that they're doing and micromanaging them is, A, only going to slow them down. It's going to kill morale. No one likes to be micromanaged. And I can understand if these guys weren't getting anything done, but these guys are working hard out there. And quite frankly, and no offense to Michael, he's been a great interim, but without a director, everyone's working even harder, everyone. And I don't want to handcuff these folks that are out there trying to bring us big deals. And these are big deals that take time to come to fruition. And these guys need the freedom to get out there and just get it done. And then let's judge them on the result.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to be petty, but, you know, in the bylaws, we tried to have a formal relationship to be a part of the process of picking a director, and that was not something that they wanted. Why do we need a formal process to be let known for them to just do their job? So.
Well, first of all, you keep characterizing this as an approval, and you just characterize it as a formal process, as part of the decision. That's not what, that's,
Adding it to the amendment, that makes it a formal process.
Let's let Michael finish his explanation, because what I'm hearing is not handcuffing the chamber in any way. What I'm hearing is that we just want to know.
please
Just
report
tell
it.
us.
And
That communication that I think is vital between us.
at this point, I've fulfilled my duty to make that request known to you. I will honor whatever you decide and take it to council accordingly.
Yeah. Well, and Michael, what I was going to say is, I appreciate the spirit of this presentation in the way that you had a discussion with the mayor prior to our meeting today, because the alternative would be we approve it if we don't have any other issues with this as is, and then it goes to the city council meeting next month, then gets, dissected, possibly rejected, and then we're back discussing this again next month. So, this is kind of a proactive approach, and I think the spirit of communication to both boards. So I appreciate it. However, secondly, I think it would have been better, because we're talking in hypothetical of language that is not created yet. So it's difficult for myself, and I think as a board, to affirm or deny such language that hasn't been yet, printed yet. So I think for future, situations, I think it would be good to have some proposed language in here, maybe in italics or tentative number 6, or I think to your point earlier, revision or expansion on bullet point number 5 that includes, including in order to kind of capture the spirit of what I guess the mayor is suggesting, to then have, I think, a better discussion of the intent, because I think we're seeing things from different perspectives. I agree with you, Director Mantuf, on I don't see it as handcuffing, but again, having a corporate background and seeing it from your perspective, Director Spano, again, want to give the chamber the latitude to make decisions and do things. So report day, I think by nature of them doing that, if we have to approve any expenditures, it's going to come to us by that nature anyway. So we're kind of, I think, almost talking in circles, or I think we're all on the same page, but this is kind of like the bylaws, just a cleanup or some language and discussion. And I think without that clarity of the exact language in there, it's hard to make a decision. So
can I ask you a question? Would your thought process is say, okay, well, we have this for consideration for approval. If we move to approve that and then consider the other item at a later time, do you think that would be acceptable?
I don't know.
Then we're talking about an amendment to the amendment. This is an amendment to the performance agreement that was approved at the last hour in December because it wasn't ready to be discussed, and because we were rushing to do that for, multiple reasons. So, Michael, if you're, do you have any input, or I guess to have you talk to Walt and what his thoughts are?
I think Michael does have something for us, but before we get into that, if you would, let me point out, the caption reads, "Consider authorizing the board president to negotiate and execute Amendment 1, blah, blah, blah." The language is not specific, but the language can be, if you approve the item, what Max wants it to be. In other words, this is an authorization. You would be authorizing Max to negotiate and execute the agreement. And so if you have specific language related to this that you think would be appropriate to allay your concerns, that can be written. And you could communicate that to Max. And, I learned about this at 6:30 last night. Thank you, Michael. And so we have not had a chance to work on that specific language. Actually, no, 4:30 is when I learned about this. And so that language can be what you want it to be. Now, if you don't want it at all, then I think you need to say that and vote accordingly.
Well, I would say, can we go back, because we've gone down a few rabbit holes here, can we go back to your original request, the feedback from the mayor, specifically what that request is, so that we could all be on the same page? Because I think we've taken a few different directions on this.
Her request was that any consultants or employees hired with funds that spring from this contract, that be reported, and that the board be made aware that that has occurred, either a hiring or a contract, what the reason is for the hiring, why did we feel necessary, what their qualifications were, and what the results of their operations are, or the results of their efforts.
And for me, I think reading bullet point 5 captures that. I think because as it reads, is to present quarterly oral and written reports on outcomes, activities, and expenditures related to Coastal DC contracted services. So maybe if you do quarterly, and I think to Director Bantu's point, if we throw in the language, as discussed before, of the at least quarterly, then at least quarterly gives us a minimum standard. But similar to the conversation we had previously about the bylaws being adjusted as needed due to any amendments or performance agreements, then any such actions or expenditures done prior to that, quarterly, could be done at that time or during these meetings.
Okay, can I paraphrase then and state back to you what I think I heard?
Sure.
You guys, take aim. You agree with the sentiment that that kind of activity should be reported to the board. However, your interpretation is that you would like it to be part of those quarterly reports, or at least quarterly reports, and that no additional language is necessary. You feel like the language in 5 satisfies that, and that you have that expectation, and I would assume Michael will do whatever we want. Michael would be glad to let us know in those reports, hey, we've hired Roger again because we're going after the big fish. And
Could I maybe make a suggestion here? To sort of compromise a little bit and play devil's advocate. If we added to the end of, I think it's item 5, I don't have it in front of me, I'm sorry. If we added to the end of item 5 to include the hiring of consultants and/or employees, and just leave it at that.
I do think there is a difference between contracted services, including consultants and employees. So if you want to specify the difference between the two, because there's definitely a difference, and all of us would agree to that. And that's not clear in the way number 5 is written.
How about for a moment we go back to How about for a moment we go back to the top of the contract? The contract's not included in the packet, but essentially we're paying an agreed price for agreed results. We don't necessarily have to micromanage every detail of how those results are achieved. Director Spano appropriately mentioned that in the corporation he works for, it doesn't matter if they hire consultants. The end result is what's necessary. And I personally believe that since we're talking about this being under performance measures, we really don't need to micromanage how the accomplishment of the contracted services are performed, whether using consultants
Or employees.
Or internal resources. Mm-hmm. I believe that performance measure number 5 does include, in the spirit of the statement that's already printed, that significant things such as, hey, we hired a contractor, a consultant to help us do this, would be great to have mentioned. But I feel in no way, means, shape, or form that it is necessary for us to micromanage the accomplishment of what's already contracted.
Everybody good with that? Everybody feel the same? That number 5 covers it and that we can get that communication in those quarterly meetings? That's how you would propose to receive that information?
I believe that would be adequate, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo, you know, we get provided the board packet and everything, and we had a chance to review that. That was comfortable enough. Any changes after that, I think that's where I have my biggest problem. So having reviewed what you presented without the additions or changes, I'm good with that.
I feel like I'm on an island here.
It's usually me.
My business is much smaller than yours, but the people who manage my budget want to know when I've hired consultants to help do the work. So I see that, I get that. I don't think it's a problem to just be told. I don't want to tell them yes or no, you can or cannot hire. I just want to know how the money's being spent. And so I'm not for asking for them to ask our approval, but I am for asking them to tell us when they're spending the money.
Which they already do, right? I think we can all agree that they already do that.
They always answer any question we ask.
Right. So it's getting done.
So, yeah. So I agree. I think this language already implies that, or specifies that actually, as far as expenditures relating to contracted services. So,
As long as it doesn't get in the way of those guys and girls
Amen.
doing business. Because John Barrio has said it before, and I've said it 100 times. We need to move at the speed of business. The speed of government is very different. I deal with the governments for a living. They do not operate the way the business world operates. That's just an absolute fact. And we don't want to get in the way of these folks doing what they are tasked to do for this city, when we are behind the 8 ball of everyone else our size. These guys need to go to work.
so do we have a moment for Michael Looney to
You bet.
throw some?
But don't let me forget to come back, because I assume we're going to have an action that I take to council, and I want to be able to accurately reflect the board's sentiment.
Good luck. Who's
I
making
also
that?
want to jump back to, you mentioned that they would like for this to be a 2-year agreement. It's been reported in the media that I am against long-term contracts. That is incorrect. The sentiment behind that statement in an earlier meeting was that I don't want to tie us down so that we're not able to move at the speed of business. But I am for agreements that are long-lasting and allow us to name that relationship far into the future. So if it's a 2-year agreement they want or a 3-year agreement that they want, I'm all for that. I just want us to be able to move within that understanding.
With your history at the chamber, we share that history, and that on the economic development side and on the DMO side, we've had a variety of term lengths. Typically, we're not allowed to go more than 5 years, but we have had in the past, I think, we actually do this with contractors at the city, where we will go with a 3-year term with 2 1-year extensions. So we've had, I think, everything from 1 year to much longer, not more than 5, but and from a staff perspective, we think the longer contracts are easier to manage. All the criticism about cycling through this year after year is true from the staff perspective also. But at this point, what council spoke to that when they did, they had those concerns in mind at that time. So I won't go into that now. I know Mike. Sure.
Do y'all have any questions for me related to what we've just discussed?
Well, I just want to get your perspective, or from the chamber, you know, if you've had any conversations with Fall as far as the language that they want to put in there.
Like on consultants, hiring a consultant, is that specifically?
No, the
Matt?
language that I think is proposed
Yeah, the proposed either
on the agenda packet.
number 6 item that there was being proposed by Michael.
Just with the understanding of the consultants component of it. That's really the only thing that was brought up last night when I consulted with Walt, when I talked to him. As far as the language is concerned, I mean, we're doing what's already in the contract as you see now, so, and probably more. So it's really not, it's not really an issue with us. It's not an issue. As far as a consultant, we've hired 2 in the past, I'd say 5 years, for 6-month or so
It's not even worth the
periods.
conversation.
And we use Cornerstone funds for those.
I'm sorry, you've hired 2 in the last 5 years.
Uh-huh.
Why is this even a conversation?
I don't know.
2 in 5 years is not even worth talking about.
Yeah.
You should have led with that.
True, but the alternative is having it approved, then rejected, and we're talking about this again next month. So I'd rather be proactive and
I hear you. No,
and
I
get
know.
it done right the first time, or push through. So, but to your
Just to understand, so if we don't get this clarified, then they don't have a contract, is what we're saying?
no, they have a contract. This is an amendment to the performance agreement
Got it.
that was pushed through the end of last year, with the understanding that we were going to revise this in the first quarter of this year.
Yeah.
To amend the specific measurables that was in the old, has been in the previous contracts and was pushed through on this last approval with the understanding that we were going to amend it. So I think all of this looks, good and clean, and I think effectively captures what y'all are doing in the chamber. So it's cleaner, it's professional. I think it was, the spirit of it was to make it more concise. I don't have the old one in front of me. It seems like we have as much, if not more bullets than the original one, if I remember that one. Do you have that?
There were like 7
Was
pages
it multiple
of
pages?
tasks,
But it was-
and now
so
we've
this
got
is
it down to
cleaner.
2. Yeah.
Okay, so this is cleaner. So again, for me, the ambiguity of potential language that, in my opinion, is already reflected in what's here. So to your point, just because obviously the board doesn't want to limit your ability to do business or so forth in the fact if any proposed language is added, if that language were to be added, whether now at this meeting or if this was approved today, rejected by council and brought
understand.
back
Sure.
to us, I just want to ask from your perspective, if that language would inhibit you or not, or is it just a matter of just redundant?
Informing COCDC of our intention to hire a consultant, is that specifically what you're asking?
Well, that's specifically what Michael is proposing as a proposed number 6.
That's fine.
So if we added that,
Yeah, I mean,
it wouldn't bother you.
we're very communicative with our COCDC team.
Right.
I mean, with staff and with you guys, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, that's how we operate. We don't hide somewhere and then bring our wares and say, what do you think? I mean, this is a collaborative effort.
Right.
It has to be.
So we're spending a lot of time talking about something that nobody really cares about.
Yeah, I mean,
Let me
the Chamber of
remind us-
Commerce Economic Development Department is happy to share with the COCDC staff and COCDC management that we have a consultant that we've hired or we'd like to hire. I mean, it's a force multiplier. Whenever we've done it, we've used Cornerstone funds, though.
So it doesn't even impact us anyway.
Director Puello,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to remind us that the only reason that this is brought up is to make council feel better about it. We don't have a problem with the way they're doing business. They don't have a problem with the way they're doing business, but council needs that statement of security.
Right.
If it's not going to be a problem to add it, and it makes them feel better about it, and it doesn't get brought back to us because they feel it's needed, then why don't we just go ahead and do it?
Right, and I agree, but again, instead of creating language or giving me the authority to approve language at a subsequent meeting, I'd rather have this discussion now and include all the board members in that. So my recommendation would be to what I said before, if we add the language on bullet number 5, at least for the quarterly, and to Bob's comment of, at the end, contractor services, and include contractors and employees, are we good?
I'm good.
Is everyone else good on the board?
I think we'd have to make a motion for that, right?
Right, absolutely, but that's kind of my proposal. If we put at least and including contractors and employees at the end of bullet 5, would that be sufficient to satisfy the city council and to include, get this through, not handcuff the chamber and their staff from doing what we asked them to do and make everyone happy so we don't have to talk about this again next month. It's just what I'm trying to ask.
Max, I don't think you could have said it any better. Well rehearsed, well thought.
So
Yeah, I mean, that's fine.
drop the mic on this?
Yeah, just
All right.
drop the mic. Let's go.
Okay.
You good? I'm good with that.
To that point,
Sure.
I believe this has been a fruitful discussion of a
Absolutely.
sub-point of this agenda item. So before we make any motion for this agenda item, I think we have another topic related that we need to talk about.
And
That
before we
being
move on
term.
to that, I'll just say that you have already communicated that you're interested in their expenditures and these activities. And it really is just a question of how we put this in the agreement. That you feel like 5 covers it as is, looks like going to consider a little modification to 5, but you're already of the same mind that you want to know how they're doing those things. Some are more and some are less interested in how they do that, if they hire an additional employee or a consultant. Some want to know, and some are saying we're just looking for the results. But I think the spirit is that you're open and interested in learning those things, and so I can communicate that to council. That regardless of how it shows up here, council, they communicated that these quarterly meetings would be an opportunity for that open communication.
My concern, again, comes back to the fact that this is a bullet point under performance measures. If the chamber were, hypothetically, going to use a consultant with funds other than economic development funds, COSA DC tasked economic development funds, and they just, for whatever reason, thought it was inconsequential to tell us they used that consultant for a particular task, because it's under performance measures, it would be a tick against them. And I don't believe that that needs to be included in the performance measures.
Please repeat that, John. Forgive me.
If we include specific reporting of hiring consultants, we get into the, in my opinion, thin ice that it is under performance measures. And if at a future time they employ or contract a consultant for a particular task that they, for whatever reason, thought was inconsequential to mention to us, they still got the job done.
I would only
It does
push
not
back
need to be a
that
bullet.
if they don't use, I think it was clear, we had this point earlier, if they don't use economic development funds, whether they choose to report it or not is inconsequential, so it wouldn't be a performance measure. Even if they hired a consultant to do economic development work with their own funds, if they chose not to report it, we wouldn't ding them because they didn't use our money. That's,
Yes.
was
You're
my clear
right.
understanding.
You're right, but John makes a good point that it could be, send a confusing message if it's listed under performance measures.
Absolutely.
Would you be in favor if it were listed somewhere else? And do you have a proposed location for that?
Actually, if it were under performance measures, I believe it could be worded such as the use of consultants.
Does that alleviate your concern? Just the modification of the language, does that?
Brandon, how about you weigh in on this?
Mike, define consultant. I've paid a couple of bucks out of our Cornerstone funds for online training. Is that a consultant? I mean, it's a fair question. I think I understand the spirit of it, and that is, if we hire like a Roger Horton, Shea Transportation, to help with a big project like the rail port, I mean, like I said, we've always customarily used our Cornerstone funding for that. You want us to talk to you about it? You're going to know all about it anyway. In fact, I still bring the guy around sometimes, so that's just one
So
example.
I think to your point, Director Barrio, however the language is, it is clear to me that Michael Looney and the chamber, if it's in performance measures or not, doesn't feel that this is going to hinder their ability to do business. So I think it's a kind of a moot point from where I'm seeing it. So I think we spent enough time on this.
I think we're good, man.
I think
we're
again, if
okay.
we could include the language and push it through and move on to the next agenda item.
Well, I haven't given up trying to please everybody, so.
So what, I mean, I don't know, as president, I guess I could make the motion since I have the language, so I'll make the motion.
Again, before we make a motion, we do have the terms to discuss. And that
Well,
motion involves
is that
this
same-
entire
is
agenda.
that- part of it? I didn't think
That's
it
not
was.
really part of it, and from my perspective as the agenda item.
I didn't
Can-
see that.
It is the amendment.
Can I just disclose
of
what
the
Walt
amendment.
talked to me about yesterday, and then let's let Brandon tell us whether or not that can be part of this discussion?
Yes,
Is that
please.
all right? Walt told me yesterday at about 6:30 that they were in favor of a two-year term. Remember, you sent a two-year term to the council. And that, here's the key part, absent a two-year term, or an additional year at this point, he is not in favor of an amendment in any form. So,
But we're considering two different things. So, or what you're saying is if the amendment passes, then we're also sending to council that it should be extended to a 2-year term.
well, your question about, can we talk about this now, is a good one, because Walt is not in favor. In other words, we don't have a cooperative opposite party unless the amendment includes 2 years. In other words, they're not in favor of this unless you also amend the term.
Well,
Is that a fair statement? That's, I think Michael and I both received that communication last
And we
night.
can't do
I
that
think
today.
this board was in favor of a
can't do that
two-year
today.
term to begin with.
Right.
It
So
was
the-
council
Yes,
that was not in favor.
Can we get Brandon, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but
No, that's all right.
there you are.
I mean, the caption for amending it isn't limited to any specific amendment, although we did upload as part of the background packet this amendment, which didn't include changes to the term. I mean, we put the language negotiate and execute in there on purpose so that if any little things come up, then it could be addressed by Max. I don't think there's a harm in talking about it, and I will point out, we have the next item as a discussion about what I thought was the agreement going forward, just a general plan for that. So, I mean, if we want to talk about the term and include that, I think it's all right. But maybe we should also open up the bigger discussion, hold the action on this item, and then open up the next item and discuss everything.
Okay, so item E, just so that we're all on the same page, what we're talking about is discussion regarding the marketing and recruitment professional services agreement between Coastal DC and the San Angelo Chamber of Commerce agreement for the next fiscal year. Presentation says here by Nora Navarez.
Yeah, this is just, I remember back in December, the board had requested that this item be put on the February meeting so that at that time, the agreement was just approved for 1 year. And so in February, you proposed that let's discuss to see if you could extend it, the new contract for 2 years, so.
Right, but we're not negotiating a new contract at this time. So I think it's a little premature to have that conversation. I think we originally proposed a 2-year agreement when it was sent to the city council back in December.
I think at minimum.
And then it was rejected, and they recommended for the 1 year. So that's why we approved it for the 1 year to get it through. My intention, as far as my involvement on the board, it has been a 2-year agreement for multiple years. The 1 year was the exception, not the rule. So I don't even, I mean, it's an item here, but to me, I don't know how the board members feel. Obviously, we could open the discussion. But I'm operating under the impression that when we do have the discussion to negotiate the next contract, that it would be for a 2-year agreement. I mean, I think that's what it has been in the past and would have been in this term. I think the exception was given in light of the recruitment of a new executive director to give them an opportunity to be involved and
Be
engage
involved.
and make any changes as needed when they came on board, which is why we agreed to do the 1 year. And so to have this conversation now without the executive director in here is a little premature on our part because.
So even the amendment of the agreement, it should be
No.
considered premature?
No, the amendment, we agreed on that last year. And we're talking about this now because we didn't have time to do the amendment before that agreement expired at the end of
Okay,
December.
I wanted to
So
clarify.
the amendment is a whole different thing, that's totally.
That was already
Right,
discussed, got it.
and we're discussing it now. What the second item E, is talking about, like, negotiating the next
The next
agreement.
term.
And I
Next
remember it was Director Barrio back, and I guess it was in December, suggested and recommended to put it in December, in this meeting, which is why we're talking about it. But again, we still don't have an executive director in place.
Yeah, I think the hope was we'd
So we
have
can
somebody.
postpone.
Right, so I think, to me, that's something that needs to be, if one goes with the other, we're either pleasing the city council or we're pleasing the chamber, it's which one are we trying to do?
Shouldn't we be pleasing the taxpayer?
Right, exactly, that's what we're here for.
We're here to please the taxpayer. We're here to drive business.
Right.
We keep talking about pleasing the city council, we keep talking about pleasing staff, that's not what we're up here to do. We're up here to make decisions for the betterment of this city moving forward, and to protect the money in which we're taking from the taxpayer. So we need to get out of our own way sometimes and quit saying that we need to please other entities. And quite frankly, we're a corporation. This isn't Parks and Rec, right? We're doing, come on, we've said it, and I don't know if it's on purpose on our accident, but we keep talking about pleasing the council and pleasing Walt and pleasing the council and pleasing this guy.
Right.
Guys, we've got to conduct business, and we've got to figure out a way to work together and try to move forward and take personal feelings out of it. This is a huge job that we all have to be doing. And sometimes I think it's getting personal, and it's certainly not for me. I'm trying to work this thing like it's a corporation, which is what we are. There's no personal feelings in a corporation. That I can guarantee you.
Director Mantis?
Am I right that this entire discussion over the last hour and a half, or however long we've been talking, is moot if we don't include 2 years in the?
That was what Walt confirmed with me, that was a make or break item in his mind.
As it should be.
But again, just to clarify, that's if the agreement that was proposed is amended to add additional language, which we're not really doing. Right, and we don't even have a motion on the floor, but again, what I had recommended was including the at least and including, at the end, which again, Michael Looney said wouldn't impact. So again, without Walt being here, again, I don't know if that's a sticking point or not, or, one has anything to do with the other. Could you clarify that for us, Michael?
The language that's been discussed on disclosing the use of a consultant, that's fine. We tell you guys everything we're doing.
But just to clarify, is that fine as long as we agree to a 2-year performance agreement?
Yes,
or is
yes,
it
that was the
fine as
instruction,
is?
that was the instruction that I received from leadership at the chamber.
So it's
That they want
fine
2 year.
Okay. 'Cause they're two different things we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
To clarify, Max, I think I'm following where you're going. So or maybe I need clarification. So for this amendment that we're looking at, this is to amend the approved 1-year agreement.
No,
This is,
that was already approved.
okay,
This
so,
is to amend the scope of services that was agreed in the original 1-year.
right, so
agreement.
we're changing the scope of services of that 1-year agreement.
Right.
Okay.
And intent, subsequently future agreements.
Right. Removing that, I guess what I'm trying to understand is if we approve this, right, this amendment, is it does that, and I guess my question would be to you, Brendan, we approve it, goes to council, they approve it, does the chamber have the right in the agreement, I don't have it in front of me to say, hey, if you change it, but we don't agree to it, we have an out clause, what is the procedural point that happens?
Yeah, so,
Because this
obvious.
is one side right now.
Yeah, the chamber would have to agree to the amendment. If they didn't, then it would just stay with the original term it is now, going to December 31st, 2023, with the same scope of services we have. And we just leave it at that, unless either party terminated it, which there's a termination
Right,
provision in
kick-out
here.
clause, I think it's 60 days,
Yeah.
60-day kick-out clause.
And then regardless of the decision we make today, or whatever decision we make today on either one of these items, will then be subject to city council approval.
Right.
Right, so even we could say 2 years, 5 years, 10 years,
Right.
whatever we decide, if we choose to decide that right now.
Well, and even
Will
if
that be
they
subject
approve
to
it, the
approval?
whole point is the chamber would have to agree to it if we change the agreement. I mean, just in a contract, right? That's how it goes. Hey, we're doing
Right.
this. Well, we don't agree. We're gonna just write it out. So
Right.
to that point,
So-
I would say table the whole thing and just, we get to the point when we have a new director and we can renegotiate a whole new agreement with amended scopes.
I mean,
I mean, what's the point of amending the 1 year?
I would agree, and again, I'll open it for input, but I'm in agreement of doing a 2-year, so I'll just put that out there.
What,
But
say that again?
to do it a 2-year agreement, when we get to that point. However, there's other terms of the contract that have to be negotiated as well, so I think it's premature, even though I feel that that's probably the intent and the spirit of where we're gonna go, because that's what we've done in the past, and the 1 year was an exception. I think it's premature to make a decision or handcuff our board now to a 2-year agreement when we haven't even started negotiating that.
I would agree.
So, I mean, my motion is to table that item E for future, the future date when we actually get into the performance agreement.
Well, and E's just a discussion anyways. I just thought of opening that up because it's a discussion about the next fiscal year. And if we're talking about amending this one to do 2-year terms, it's kind of the same thing. So I don't think we need a motion on that one, just on the amendment issue. Or, I mean, if you want to table the amendment, then you could certainly do that.
No, I think I'm good. I'll open it up again. I think we spent a lot of time on this, and this is another separate item. I'd go back to D, and again, I'm in agreement. I mean, a motion has been made, but to add that language in there, just a couple of words on bullet 5, and let's move on to that if we have consensus on that or an agreement, or we could vote and shoot it down and talk about it again next month, whatever we want to do. But I think, then we could talk back about E, but my personal opinion on that is it's premature to open up, to negotiate one item on a performance agreement. Then there's other, what if we want to change, we say it's going to be 2 years, but we want to reduce the amount that we pay the chamber? I don't think he's going to be in agreement with that, right? So I think it's premature to have any conversation about what that next agreement is going to be, in my opinion, without talking about the whole thing.
So we wouldn't even consider this amendment then?
No, there's two separate things.
But,
Yeah.
well, there's an amendment for the term, and then there's an amendment to the performance measures and scope of work. They're both amendments, right?
No, the proposal number 2 is not an amendment, it's for the new contract. We have a contract in place
Right,
for
but-
1 year.
Understood. But the first part, the scope of work stuff and the stuff that we want to add for performance measures, that's still amending the first agreement that we have?
Right.
So it is an amendment that we have, it's been made clear to us, we can go through all the process, check all the boxes, council can approve it, but the chamber's not going to agree to it if it doesn't have a 2-year term attached. So I'm saying, why go through the whole exercise?
Well, if the chamber would not approve it if we add that language that was proposed.
No, but it also was clear to me that leadership was only in favor if it included a 2-year amendment to the term, correct or not?
That's correct.
Simple as that.
But they were in approval of the scope of services as it was prior, right? I mean,
Yeah, that
as
was
of
fine.
yesterday, this
Yeah, that
was mutually agreed upon
Yeah,
and worked
that
upon.
was fine.
So if
And
we
the
left it the
consultant
way it's
language, that's fine
proposed,
too.
then the 2 years is a moot point.
But
Because we're,
with the 2-year addition or not? I mean, now I'm getting confused. My understanding was clear was, hey, what you're proposing, we're good, change the language, but you need 2 years.
Right, leadership wants a 2-year term,
if there was a change to what's written in front of us.
correct.
But if we approve it the way it is,
That's where the miscommunication is happening.
It's happening
Any
somewhere.
change, I think what they're trying to figure out is, any change to the scope of services, even what's proposed today, what was on the agenda today, must be accompanied by a 2-year term.
That's what I'm asking, Michael. Thank you.
Anything.
Yes.
So I think what I'm hearing from Michael is that what Ruben's saying is correct. That if we don't change to 2 years, an updated scope is off the table.
That's exactly how I'm understanding it.
Me too.
so let me just clarify. So,
Cradle to Looney. Yes, that's right. Mike, cradle to grave, you get your first call, I don't know what you guys call it, a lead, a hot lead, whatever the lingo is. Cradle to grave, how long does it take? Normally?
3 years.
Bingo. That was my only question. 1 year does absolutely nothing. 2 years barely covers it. You guys are talking about big business. This isn't, I won't say that. I don't want to offend any other business. This is big business that these guys are bringing in. These take an incredible amount of work to get done, to bring to the table before the first shovel is in the ground. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of giving these guys the freedom to do what they do. But I'm telling you right now, no one is going to get out of bed and go work their hardest every single day when they don't have the security to know, okay, is this deal that I'm working on, am I actually going to see it come to fruition? They don't know that. These guys and girls have got to be able to get out there and work. And a 1 year deal is never going to cut it. A 2 year deal is absolutely not going to cut it. There's no way. 2 years is not enough.
Well, the good thing is we'll be able to discuss it right now, well, not next, but separately as a whole thing. But what's very clear is there's no consideration on our partner's part if there's not if there's not an amendment to the terms of the agreement, which at this time, I don't think we want to make an amendment to the actual length of terms. It would be, the whole purpose before was we wanted to have a director in place so that they could have some input. We don't have a director in place. This agreement goes through till December. We could put this an agenda item, March, April, when our new director's here.
A new director that's coming on is not going to want to come on to a broken system that may have 6 months left on a contract. A new director is going to want to come in and learn the process of how we do things here. And a new director is going to want stability. And they're going to want to know that they have folks that are working out there hard every day that are not worried about their employment. That's what a new director is going to want. That I can almost guarantee you.
Well, I would agree with you there.
Y'all need to.
I'm in favor for moving for an amendment beforehand, but I'm just trying to keep on what we're actually talking about in terms of the actual agenda items, right?
Well, we have two.
Right.
Right.
Okay, the second item is actually only a discussion item, not
Do
an
you
action
know,
item.
the 2 year term extension, was that to begin on the date of the amendment or from the date that the original term would expire? Because that would essentially give you a 3 year term if it's after the original term expires, but.
I don't know.
Ultimately, we can tack it on however.
I can't, does that discuss with you what the kickoff date would be? The thought is we're 2 months into this 1 year extension already. And I think we've done some good collaborative work on creating a good document, a really solid document that everybody understands and feels confident in. And we do too. We think it's been a good exercise.
Okay,
The old contract needed a little bit of scrubbing up anyway.
Michael, from an in-house perspective at the Chamber of Commerce,
Yeah.
do you, with a 1 year contract or any short-term contract, spend an inordinate amount of time working on and concerned with the renewal of the contract that detracts from your actual economic development activity?
Well, yeah, I mean, it takes time because, we have to spend energy and thoughtfulness and time on preparing for our presentation and our collaborative work to get the contract renewed. So, if you have a longer term, you just don't have to think about it as much because it's already set. If there's a deficiency, if there's a problem, the COCDC has the full ability to cancel the contract. I think it's a 30-day notification. It's a 60-day kickout. So it's a month-to-month contract anyway. It just prevents us as staff and our leadership from having to go through the exercise of discussing and working out all the details on a renewal when the scope of work is pretty much stayed the same. It's pretty consistent. Recruitment of companies, business retention, expansion, promotion of San Angelo, and marketing. So that's really all it does. That's really the reason. That's really the main reason. It's just extend it out a little bit longer so that we just don't have to all go through this.
It seems to me that if we have a 10-year contract, the new director, when he comes in, has a chance to look at everything, has the ability to come to us and say, hey, can we amend the contract as it stands today.
Absolutely, and Walt Koenig verbalized that the last time he was before us and discussed this, that he was open to any amendments in time, as long as they made sense.
I just don't want us to go down a trail that is gonna be shoved back at us. down the
Agreed.
road.
Agreed.
I wanna
So,
talk about this
in any
one last
presentation before our authorizing unit, the city council, this rationale has to be clearly communicated. Michael, one additional thing, follow up to what I just asked you. Does the security of a longer term or the insecurity of a short-term contract influence the interest of any of the prospective businesses that you've ever consulted with?
Well, when we're talking to a corporation about building a facility in San Angelo, we're really not going to get too deep into our contract terms with Costa DC. That's in internal business. It does provide a lot of confidence and comfort when you have a longer term. I mean, that shows a commitment by Costa DC to the chamber. We believe in you guys. We like your work. We're confident in it. We see the results. We don't have to go through this process every year because it's not like it's a 1 month or 1 meeting process. I mean, I contacted Guy Andrews in June of last year asking about our contract that's going to come up at the end of last December. And here we are. So, and I'm not saying that to sound sour or negative. This is a process, and this is part of the deal. I've negotiated contracts my whole life. That's all I did in Austin when I was down there. So I get it, but it's time consuming, and it can be distracting. It's a necessary thing we all have to go through. But yeah, I mean, if we have a longer term, it's just a confidence builder, is what it is, and it lets us know, me and our staff know that we're not going to have to in August or July or whenever start this process over again because it's already set and we don't have to
Well,
worry.
it's certainly been distracting to this board today.
It has.
I think with the essence of time, I'll make a motion, shoot me down if I'm wrong, we're here. I make a motion that we approve the amendment that was proposed, given with the language that you changed, but add to the end of the contract, so as of December 31st, or whenever the amendment would change, that would kick off to not 2 years, but 3 years. That would be my motion.
I mean, and that's something to remind council. You've got a 60-day kick out.
Let them answer. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, thank you.
I'm personally okay with that, but what about renewal options in there?
Well, I think that's in the existing contract that talks about renewal or anything like that.
Well, I mean, this one's just a straight 1 year right now, so.
So are we talking
we
a 3
need
with
to-
2 1s, or we talking?
It would, I mean, do you still have the same out clauses? I mean, I guess we would have to have a second and maybe discussion or something.
Yeah, and
Robert's
the
rules.
termination provision is 30 days.
It's still 30
And
days.
it's not, it's for convenience, so no cause required, I mean.
I would personally like to see a 3-year contract with 2 1-year extensions.
Oh, at the end on top of that?
Yes.
Yes.
Excuse me, Brandon.
I think that's
That's where I
That's
was
what you were
going.
saying? Oh,
That's
I'd
where I
like
was
to
going.
amend that then. I'd
That's what
like
I
to amend
meant.
my motion to include that.
Okay, so 3
So
years.
it is approve the proposed language that was presented by Michael, that was tweaked by Max, and then add 3 years to the end of the current contract ending, plus 2 1-year option
What
periods.
I would just caution us, just from a process or procedures, is there's 2 separate items here. So
Separate agenda items.
So if I want to be clear, from my perspective, you could, do what you want to do, but I think we should treat them as 2 separate items, because combining them into one motion, and once it goes to city council.
Well, let's
if
just
they
see
have
where it
an-
goes.
Well, if they have an issue with one or the other, they're going to have to reject it, and they're both going to come back to us. So what I'd rather do is approve each separately, and if they have a problem with one, but not the other, they could approve the one, and then next month, we're talking about the one issue that they may not have a problem with.
You continue to bring that up, but our partner organization has said that that's not going to fly. Even if we accept one, the other thing has to happen. So they, in my opinion, in my understanding, based on all the circling, the 2 are interconnected. And at this point, I hate to be rude, but look, the motion's there, shoot it down, don't shoot it down, like, in terms of either there's a second or there's not a second. And then we would discuss it, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, the second item, E, is only a discussion item anyway, so we're not going to be taking any action on that. I think D is broad enough because it's just an amendment and it gives Max authority to negotiate and execute anyways that it can encompass other things other than just the scope of services like the term.
The term is mentioned in the sub-bullet points under summary and history on the agenda item.
Okay. So, I mean, there is, I think,
If I could, just back away and recap. We had a proposal that had some language that we publicized.
Understood. Let's just either shoot down the motion,
Yeah.
like, so there is, or
I'm-
we kill it, right? What's the, in terms of Robert rules? We can't
Ruben,
have
I'm
it,
going your
but we
direction,
can-
but I'm going to help Max understand your
Okay,
position.
thank you.
We had language that we talked about, that Walt and I had worked out. We had a suggestion from the mayor, which is kind of an on-the-fly proposal, a mix of opinions, but you addressed that. We also had another on-the-fly proposal for a term from our other party that said, we got to have another year or it's a no-go.
But let me point of clarification there. The deal, the proposal that you and Walt had brought today was agreed upon, as it was written,
Yes.
before you presented it to the mayor.
With a
Yes.
stipulation of.
Wait, no, that's what I want to clarify. Was that with the stipulation of the 2 years, or without it, just the way it was?
That did not come up.
That's my point.
But
Right.
I don't have the authority to execute that, nor did we execute anything. So it was a meeting of the minds on those terms. However, since 4:30 yesterday, we've had two other items come up for consideration. One is the one about consulting. Y'all worked out a compromise among you about how you might handle that. The remaining item is from the chamber that we've got to have another year or no amendment should move forward.
As a result of the language from 4:30?
No.
No.
Plain and.
And that's what I was asking Michael a while ago, is that their position is now that even if all the mayor's suggestion had not come forward, that at this point, they're saying even what we had agreed to should not move forward unless it is accompanied by an additional 1 year. And so, hence Ruben's position that they are linked because we no longer have that meeting of the minds between Walt and I about these terms, or between the chamber and the board, because we're uncertain about the term. And so without that, we don't have a meeting without the 2 year or more years as proposed in the motion, we don't have a meeting of the minds. In other words, they're unwilling to participate with the amended scope if it also does not include the term. And so, the only other thing is Tina pointed out she'd like it to stay on the years. So, Ruben,
yeah, in
the
terms of
format,
fiscal time, yeah.
the format of additional years on the end of this suits her needs.
Yeah.
And so the question just remains, how you handle
Thank you
the
for
motion.
clarifying that.
Respectfully, Director Ceballos, would you please repeat the motion before I second it?
Sure. Okay. So, motion is to approve what was presented in terms of the board packet with the tweak to item 5 that incorporated proposed item 6, and to add 3 additional years to the end of the existing contract that we have already agreed upon, plus 2 one-year options. Is that?
I second that.
Okay, so we have a first by Director Ceballos, a second by Director Barrio. Okay, and just so that I'm clear, so the term is to add 2 years to 3 years
Plus 2 one-option periods.
to the existing
Yes.
agreement.
Yes.
Okay, so that technically would make the 1 year in effect, a 4-year contract.
Yes, with the knowledge that each party can bow out with a 30-day, 60-day out clause, just like any other agreement.
Brandon, I had mistakenly said 60 days. It's a 30,
Yeah,
but it's
it is.
got the 30 days behind the notification
Yeah.
period to refund the city of any COSA DC funds.
Yeah.
That's
So
where
at
I was
that
coming up
point,
with the 60.
new director
But you're
comes
right,
in, they
Ruben,
don't like it.
it's 30-day kick-out.
Yeah.
Effectively, if you do a 5-year term with us, with the chamber, it's a month-to-month.
It's like an
When I
NFL
was
contract.
when I was
The
in the
only thing that
business,
matters is the
a
guaranteed
kick-out
money.
clause, a month-to-month kick-out clause, 30-day notification period, it's a month-to-month contract. It just prevents us from having to go back and.
And
I mean,
doing this
if-
again.
Because you
We're gonna
shouldn't
be back here, we're gonna be back in June, doing this all over again.
Well, not
So
if we-
effectively
not if
now,
this
what we're
gets
talking
approved.
about is, just get the term you want, let's get on to
This should
business.
get approved, this should get approved by both bodies. If you care about the future of the city and you
Agreed.
want to bring big deals, this should get approved. And if this board doesn't approve it, that's going to be an issue for me.
I would agree.
And if this board approves it, then y'all are going to have some work to do with the folks that appointed you to get them to understand why we do the things that we do up here. This thing should pass if you care about this city.
If I could, typically, legal sets a hard 5-year limit on these. The addition of 3 plus 2 ones would put us over 5. And so Brandon, I'm gonna put you on the spot again.
Oh, gosh.
Is that doable, or does it need to be a 3 plus 1 to keep us at the 5-year limit?
I know, I would go check on that, because I haven't heard the 5-year limit.
Well,
Now, there's things about leases and stuff, about having conveyances past 40 years and stuff like that, but I may be mistaken. I mean, if we want to take a minute, I'll go check on something, I can do that. but-
I'll wait. You want to wait?
Same here.
I'd
Let's
like to
wait.
wait, call recessed. This gentleman needs a little break.
We'll call a recess. It is
10:07?
10:07.
Before we hang up, the agenda items actually to delegate authority to Max.
Yes, negotiate and execute.
And so, do we need a specific approval of terms, or does that motion?
I mean, with as much discussion and contention that we've had, I would like.
Specific?
Yeah. Are we back on?
Are you ready? Let me go make sure we're back.
I got a green light.
Okay,
All right.
so
So we're back, just call the meeting back to order. It is 10:15. Go ahead, Brandon.
So the question with the 5-year term, there's no legal prohibition on a term that would exceed 5 years. As a policy matter, not to constrain like future councils and board members, we've leaned towards not going over the 5 years, but you're not prohibited from doing that if that's your motion. And especially the way we're doing it with, it's 3 years with 2 options. We could not exercise those options, and as we discussed, we have the 30-day termination provision anyway, so I think we're okay.
So we're okay in terms of the way it was proposed? No, sorry. We were okay in terms of the way it was proposed, there's no limits to a 5-year cap or anything?
Right.
Okay.
So your motion stands.
My
It's
That's
understanding,
my
on the
second.
table. It's on the table. So we're in discussion mode. Uh-huh.
I think we want to make clear the chamber's position, Michael. And now we're going to put you on the spot. Are those terms, is that motion, those terms
Agreeable.
what you would accept, what the chamber would accept?
Can you repeat them once more?
so we would be, the motion is to accept the provisions in the scope of agreement, amendments, and
Yep.
all that with the addition of 3 additional years to the end of this agreement with 2 one-year options following that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Excellent.
That's a confidence builder.
Thank you.
So, and Michael, just as a point clarification, again, not to get in the weeds too much on this, but by extension though, I mean, the salary amount that's in there, the monetary amount that's in there, I mean, that, I could see that as being a negative because we're saying that that's going to be the amount for the next 5 years with the cost of everything going up. Is that a fair position to put the chamber in?
As I recall, that was brought up last time Walt stood before us. And that's something that can be reviewed every year
Every
with
year.
additional amendments.
That
That's
was-
just part of our partnership,
Okay.
that we have open communication on that.
John, that was my original statement, was that I didn't want to nail us down to a specific amount for an extended period of time. As long as that is able to be adjusted from year to year, then I don't have a problem with an extended
With
contract.
amendments, I believe it can be, can't it?
Yeah, through amendments, I mean, otherwise it's just the amount.
So Michael, you'll just
Always
need to
amend.
come back to us when the economy indicates salaries need to change, or if you
Sure.
add people.
Contracts are fluid documents. There's
I
always
agree.
going to be changes
Yep,
over
they
5
can
years,
be, both
10
parties
years,
agree, they
20
can be
years.
modified.
Not out of the norm.
Okay,
Very
and-
simple.
And then just to, once this motion is approved, then Michael, Dane, would it be you that's presenting this to council?
I will, my goal is to take whatever you approve to council on March 7th.
Okay, because,
And because of this, I would ask for the board to be present and to be ready to answer questions about the added term.
Well,
Because that deviates from what they previously talked about and what they previously approved. I think they're going to have questions about the philosophy behind that change. And
yeah, and that's kind of my point, because again, they rejected a 2-year proposal just back in December, which is why we went to the 1 year. So now to add that, again, I would anticipate some questions. However, I didn't want to, again, my mindset was to have them separately, so if they were good with the scope of services, we could at least move that forward And then if they had a question or a kickback on the other, we won't have, open up the whole can of worms again for next time, for next month.
I agree, and I think that makes sense, but the chamber has said they won't take one without the other.
Yeah. I think to reiterate your point, Director Spano, is we have a job to do, which I believe we're doing now, and then the city council has their job to do. Or maybe I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's how I interpreted it.
You're 100% right, but the reason why we are appointed to this board, right, is because, and even on any, I was on P&Z for a while, and all of you have been on different things. Well, they exist for a reason, because your city council person can't be everywhere and every time, right? It's an impossibility. And that's why those boards and committees exist, to guide them and give them the proper information as to why we came to a decision, right? So after today, however this vote goes, it's our job to work with
Our council person, yeah.
city council person to explain why we made the decision that we made. And hopefully, they understand, and I don't know what the outcome of this vote's going to be. I know how I'm voting. I know how my neighbor's voting, right? But I'm convinced if this thing passes, we have work to do with our city council people. And I firmly believe that if they want to win moving forward, this is the best option.
Agreed.
And I would just ask, well, once, because we're in the discussion phase, if this motion is to be approved and it presented to the city council on March 7th, I would just ask whoever's presenting on it, if it's you, Michael, Dane, just to be clear, or whoever else, clarify that, because again, when I think this was presented back in December, I feel that there was a lot of question and pushback, and I feel that it wasn't communicated as effectively as it could have been, which I think is why we're having this conversation now, and why it was brought on the agenda by Director Barrio back in December to be put on the agenda now, because our original proposal was to do the 2-year. And so that was rejected. So we're trying to do this, be proactive, and again, clearly communicate to them. I want to make sure that the contract can be amended at any time.
Yeah,
Right? Because I think if that would have been communicated in December, then we probably would have stuck with the 2-year in the first place.
I don't agree. They know it can be amended at any time. They have their own ideas, and I don't think that would have made any difference. But there will be room for you, as many of you as you want, at the podium on March 7th. We can even post for a possible quorum so that we can have multiple board members speak at that time. And I would encourage you.
Is that a hard date, Michael?
Yeah, that is. That's what it means. Yeah, I won't be in town. I
I
won't be
won't either. I'm
available.
on spring break.
No, it's the week after spring break.
I don't get
Spring break is
spring
the week
break.
after.
I know, but I don't have kids, so you make
Okay.
your own spring
Yeah,
break.
okay, there you go.
I'm on spring break that week. I'm out of town.
Yeah.
I make my own spring
All right,
break.
there you go.
Just to add to your clarification for the record, to be very, very, very clear, this agreement could be 1 year, 6 months, 10 years. It is built in the agreement that we can amend it at any time, and also could be terminated with a 30-day notification. So regardless of the term of the agreement, 1, 2, 10, 50, all those things can happen, no matter what. I want to put that on record in case anybody's watching.
There you go. Okay.
And I think they would say the same to you, that regardless of the term, it can be amended.
Exactly.
All right. Okay.
Works both ways.
So we have a motion. We
All
have
the
a
more
second.
reason to do it.
Do we have any
And let
public
these
comment?
guys go to work.
Do we have any public comment at this time? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Are there enough of you that may be present that we should post for a possible quorum? Or
Yes.
You said March 7th?
Man, I hate to miss that.
March 10?
Seven. Tuesday.
All right, we'll do that then.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
at 8 a.m.?
8:30.
8:30 a.m.?
8:30 at the convention center.
Yeah, count me in.
Okay. All right.
Show
so
up
we'll-
early, you have to go through a metal detector.
so
We
item-
probably need some clarity on where we are on the agenda. Have we wrapped up both D and E?
I believe so. We're
Yeah,
moving on
okay,
to
I
F.
think so.
So F, update regarding affordable housing program, presentation by Bob Salas. Come on down, Bob.
Thank you for being patient.
You're the next contestant.
All right. Good morning, Board. This update is really not only for the Board, but also for the citizens out there, so they can get a better understanding of what we do and what accomplishments we've had in this program. The affordable housing component of the economic development sales tax didn't kick off until 2008, when the first gap financing project was constructed. My department oversees and manages $335,000 annually for gap financing to help citizens achieve the American dream of homeownership. But more importantly, the program supports neighborhood revitalization. Now, as long as the funds are used for affordable housing to benefit low, moderate income citizens, based on HUD guidelines, the board decides what kind of program design it wants to fund. You can continue with new home construction. You can change it to rehabs. You can change it to rentals or any other eligible activity that HUD deems eligible. Remember that. Here's a list of our developers and our financial institutions. You can see the developers. We have that Galilee CDC is the only nonprofit, and they happen to carry the load. They do most of the projects. And Crockett happens to be the most active financial institution, but I believe they got bought out by Pinnacle. Is that correct? And now they're taking over their portfolio. A little bit of history. The initial guidelines consisted of $40,000 gap financing plus closing costs. At that time, the city had over 200 tax foreclosed lots that we sold for $750 through the Urban Development Program, which was a really great deal. However, those tax lots sold pretty quickly, and by 2014, available lots were difficult to find and were becoming very expensive. So we changed the guidelines to include $5,000 for a gap for lot purchase. Unfortunately, construction and property costs continued to increase pretty dramatically. So the staff came to the board last year to increase the gap to $50,000 and allow $15,000 for lot purchase. And please note that staff does not recommend changes based on citizen complaints, like some people believe. Our recommendations are based on data and program needs. Here's a graph that you can see by the graph that both the average and median home prices in San Angelo have pretty much skyrocketed over the years. However, the sales price of our AHAP program has been relatively stable. 2014 is an important date because that is the time and point where the private sector stopped participating due to the high cost of construction and low profit margin. They just couldn't make it happen anymore, so they stopped. And that left us with Galilee CDC as the sole developer. And fortunately, they have been they've been able to keep the sales price relatively affordable. Here are a few other programs and projects that we have funded since 2008. It includes neighborhood blitzes, rehabs, roof replacements, Shelton Street homes, and low-income housing tax credits. I'll get into those in the next slide. This slide shows the funds allocated and results of each program and project. You can see that we've spent over $4 million for 98 homes. Actually, we have 100 homes that we constructed, but 2 were were last month, actually. So, but this cutoff is at December 2022. The average gap financing was at $40,000. The lowest gap financing was $33,000, and the highest was $58,000. We also spent $480,000 to put new siding and paint 126 homes as part of our Neighborhood Blitz program. We spent $150,000 to remodel 60 units in our target neighborhoods. We spent $200,000 on 112 new roofs, and we built 6 new spec homes with $600,000, and those homes were turned over relatively quickly. We were sold back into the program. And then we spent $20,000 to support low-income housing tax credits, and we ended up getting 228 new apartment units from that. So you can see that a lot of this funding has a lot of good results. Now, like I mentioned before in other slides, the AHAB doesn't just help low-mod income citizens buy a home, but it is a critical component of the city's neighborhood revitalization plan. Staff, with the help of Dr. Craig Myers and ASU, we conducted a study on the west side of Blackshear and to measure the impact of the city's efforts. So you can see with this graph that as investments are introduced, property values climb and crime rate and code violations decrease, which are all signs and indicators of successful neighborhoods. So I think the program does help. And the last slide I've got for you is even with all the positives associated with this program, there are still some issues that the board needs to be aware of. First, the continued rising costs of construction will force the board to consider increasing the gap even higher than it currently stands at. That is if we want to continue new home construction. Secondly, we need a policy in place to deal with foreclosures. Now, out of the 98 new homes we've built, actually over 100, 2 have been foreclosed on. So that's actually a pretty good stat, I mean, considering. However, and I think because of the turnover because Crockett got bought out by a new organization, they're pressing a little harder, and now we have 3 under the threat of foreclosure. And I believe they came to you last week to talk about maybe creating a policy. But we do need to come up with a policy or process to kind of protect our investments. And I just wanted to give you a quick overview of what we've done, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
So with Crockett being bought out by Pinnacle and their standards being a little more challenging for the people that are in there, are we looking at other banks or mortgage companies as
We do. We're constantly looking for new members. We do get some, and then they pull out. For some reason, one of the problems that banks have with this program is that we have 2 notes. We have the bank note, then we carry our note. We have to have ours to make sure we're protected. And so they can't sell those out in the market, and because you can't sell it, they have to keep it in-house. And of course, that costs money. And that's one of the reluctance we have from some of the banks. If we can find someone to cover that, we should be able to get more participation.
Well, what are your thoughts? Because we had this conversation at the special meeting to protect ourselves. Because right now, as Coastal DC, we're a second lien holder, right? So which is why we had to make payments to bring them up to speed, if not, to protect our interest. What about the possibility of us financing it 100% Coastal DC? That way, we eliminate the mortgage company, and then that money, as we get paid back, we could reinvest it in other future projects.
Well, my department actually did that. We used to build homes very similar to these, and we'd carry the mortgage. We did that for many years. The problem is that it came up to staffing. As the grants got cut, I had to cut staff, and one of the staff members I cut was a person that we were going to train based on the SAFE Act. It's a state requirement that people who offer mortgages get special training and special certifications. We'd have to do that, but there's absolutely no reason why we can't do it. It would just be a matter of getting another person to kind of get them trained and ready to go and to manage it. Because as you know, if you managing a mortgage is time consuming, but we certainly can do that, and we have done it in the past. If that's something the board is interested in.
Max, if I could, if we decide to try to go down that road, one of the things because of those requirements and because of growing regulation in the mortgage industry, what we may want to do is examine alternatives such as being a cosigner rather than, and letting the professionals handle the month-to-month so that we don't have to hire somebody who is acquainted with those rules. We let the professionals do what they are best at, and we just provide what is really our contribution, and that is the financial backing. And so if we decide to go that way, I think we've got some options that we should work through to help minimize the tax-based burden versus, but.
And another thing that I'll bring to the board, Galilee has always been interested in moving into rental housing. So they're interested in buying these houses. I mean, they invest and they build, and I mean, they're our Chodo. As a Chodo, they're capable to do certain things. And one of the things they could do is to purchase our home somehow. I'm not sure what the mechanism would be, but if we could somehow find a way, we could transfer those properties to them, and they could just turn them over to so they could become rentals, which is another big need, as you know. Not only home ownership is important, but so are rentals.
Yes,
and we're finding out when we do our analysis, our annual analysis on the community needs on housing, number one is affordable rental housing.
Yeah.
So,
I just want to say, Bob, thank you very much for all the work that your office does, and our friends at Galilee too as well. I mean, it's extremely important work, and you brought up what my question was going to be. What other things would you bring up to us as other options, things that you see in the future? And I think that may be one option there. Anything else that you would want to bring to our attention?
well, those are the main things. Like I said, we need to protect our investments. But as we go down the road, maybe we should consider changing the scope of the program. Maybe we do more rehabs. But the problem with rehabs is that they're existing homes. Bringing in a new home into a target neighborhood has an incredible impact on visual impact. And that carries a lot of weight when it comes to neighborhood revitalization. So this new home construction is incredibly important. If you start letting private sector do that, they'll buy it, but they'll rent it out. And then you have, they get the profits, and our clients, the people, our demographics, get shafted, to be honest with you, for lack of a better word. There's not enough of a benefit for them. So new home construction, I support it. I think most of our affordable housing stakeholders understand the importance of new homes versus rehabs. They're both important, of course, but we have other funds for rehabs. We have CDBG funds. We have other things that we do for the rehab part of it. It's the new homes is the problem for us. So this provides a solution. Right. So I would certainly support continuing the new home construction, protecting our investments somehow, whatever we come up with, whatever policy we come up with, and then see where we go from there.
Touching on the policy, with your background and experience, do you have any insight that you can share with us on a proposed policy, or what do you think would?
Well, we kind of want to wait to see what you guys think, and I think you're going to discuss that later on. I'd like to get your input first, and then see where your druthers are, and then we'll go from there. We'll be glad to help come up with a policy. I would like to work with Galilee, because they are our developer for the most part. And then see we're just going to get our heads together, get our minds together, see what options we have, and what options would work.
Bob, if you could, for the sake of the public, I've often heard confusion between Galilee, whom you're referring to, and a local church going by the same name. Could you just explain what Galilee is that you deal with?
Okay, well, Galilee...
We have... Yeah.
Well, tell you what, let me bring her up here so she can tell you what they do, okay? Which is not really church related.
Poor girl, she should have been first on the agenda.
Hello, I'm Stephanie Hamby. I'm the Executive Director of Galilee CDC. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We are not a religious organization at all. We were named Galilee because our founder, Floyd Cryer, was a pastor at Galilee Baptist Church when he founded our organization. So that's where the name came from. But we are a community development corporation. We do everything affordable housing. This program is one of our biggest programs that we do with you guys. We work very closely. We get it from start to finish. So we take the client when they come in to apply, and we work with them and the banks and the city and everybody else. So we follow them start to finish. We've expanded a lot of programs to help this be a very good program for everybody, in the fact that we offer, we have a trained staff to offer homebuyer education, financial education, budgeting, credit, all of that stuff. We work very closely with the banks. I talk to the people over at Pinnacle at least once or twice a week. They are very, very good. They love these loans. They hold probably 90% of the loans. They work with those clients all the time. During COVID, they even caught some of them up themselves without saying anything to the public about it. They are very, very dedicated to this program. Pinnacle is the same. They came in, they bought them out, but they maintained everything the same. They do everything they can before they send out that letter to the clients. And they even, we even try to catch them as well. So we all work very closely together. We have brought on Trans-Texas Credit Union for the first time, I think, into this program just this month. We have a brand new one getting ready to start using them. You do have to escrow, which is a problem. This program requires the bank escrow, and so some of the banks cannot do that. They will not do that, so we have a limited number of banks we can work with. So in case the city or whatever wants to take that on, you have to learn to escrow and do all the funding and federal requirements for escrowing as well. So, which is a whole nother issue, which is why Galilee does not necessarily want to own these homes either, because we don't want to escrow. As far as the rentals go, we do look at them, but we would much rather rehab the house and turn it back into the AHAP program, if we were allowed to do that. Under no place does Galilee ever want to evict any of our homeowners, so we stay out of all of that. Once we sell the home, we're involved with our clients, but we are not involved in any of that process after that. We do work very much in these neighborhoods. Everything that we build, we closed House 73 just last month with a 4.5-year waiting list for this program right now. So we build as many homes as we can, but we have a huge waiting list for this program. And we work with these people from the moment they talk to us. Every 6 months we meet with them. And we offer, how is your debt? How is your credit? How is your income? Our income requirement is $22,000 for these houses. We have, I know, I'm looking at your face. Because we work very, very closely with the banks and everybody else, is that we try to keep their mortgage loans at $75,000 or less. Some are going to go higher because they have bigger families or whatever, or they're at the very top of our income limit, but we keep them under 30% of HUD's mortgage price as far as their payment. We do everything we can to keep these guys successful. Our sales price is around $120,000, $130,000 for these houses. We do not make money on these houses in this program, through this program. We have our CHOTO funds from home funds from the city, which helps us, but really we don't take construction loans. We fund everything of these programs up front. So we do everything we can to keep these low. So when we're talking affordable housing, we don't sell a house for more than $200,000. Everything we do is under $200,000. That to us is affordable housing. That is the group we're trying to target. These really, lower priced housing, but they're good quality houses. We have great clients. We've turned around neighborhoods. So we love this program. We love this community. But that's who we are and what we do. Any other questions?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry, I love to talk about what we do.
So anyway, that's all we have this morning, and then we'll wait for your direction. Once we get that, we'll craft a policy for foreclosures, and we'll come back to you to those. We'll just amend the guidelines at that point, so you guys can take a chop at that and stuff. Okay?
So, Bob, just to clarify, so on average, how many new construction homes are done on an annual basis?
Ours?
Yeah.
We do about 5 to 6. Kind of depends on a lot of things. And when we first started, we had a lot of fund balance, and we were able to use that fund balance for a variety of other programs and their eligible activities. So that helped a lot. Unfortunately, we used up all the fund balance, so
What does the last 2 years look like with record high inflation in this country? What have you all been doing? How has it changed what Galilee has been doing?
Well, the big change, of course, is their profit. Because nonprofits do make profit, by the way. So as construction costs are skyrocketing, they've been able to maintain that affordability through other programs. So as that climbs, and I'm sure, I can't imagine it would not continue climbing. You saw that one slide which shows the average median or the average price of houses going to 300,000. That's going to keep shooting up, even here in San Angelo. As that goes up, they have to start adjusting as well. They have to make sure they have enough funding, either through CHODO funds, through our city, or through this program, to keep them viable. Otherwise, they won't be able to participate either. And then we'll have to kind of look at it again and see what else is there. So I'm sure that answered your question, but.
Yeah, no, it was just a open-ended question, more of a conversation. I was just curious how you only have so many funds, right? And
That's correct.
You look at what's going on in the last 2 years, how do you make up that difference?
Yeah, well, we do it through CHODO funds, and understand this too, that when those CHODO funds, they can actually, the profits they get from those CHODO funds, they can turn them around and they become second use, and then at that point, they can do different things with it that that HUD no longer requires you don't have to meet HUD requirements anymore. So those are that's very useful to have, and so that's how they get by doing the things they do, keeping the affordability down, and that's their goal. The private sector can't do this. We know that. We've noticed that. They tried early on, and it worked out okay at first, but after about 3 or 4 years, 5 years, the skyrocketing costs, they just couldn't do it anymore. So they dropped out. Now, we do have an opportunity, though. If we have a client that has great credit and can get a $155,000 mortgage, they can go to an existing brand-new home that's been built and try to purchase that through this program. They can do that. But the problem is that group is so small.
Yeah.
That window of opportunity to get somebody qualified is so small. You can't make too much, but you got to make enough, and your credit's got to be good. So you all that, the combination.
Is there inventory of homes like that, though?
Now, we have a few. What happens is, the great thing about neighborhood revitalization is the goal of that, when we first started back in 2006, the goal was to infuse city activity, nonprofit activity first, to help to get the private sector involved. And guess what? They're getting involved. You go to Lakeview, oh my goodness, they're building a lot over there. In Rio Vista, they've got a lot. Private sector's doing that. Unfortunately, when they get involved, prices go up. It's a little bit harder to get our low income citizens, qualified for those. But there's a few, not many, but we have a few that can do that.
Is there a policy that keeps you from purchasing existing housing, or does it all have to be new construction?
This guidelines, the guidelines that you all came up with was new construction, the very, very beginning. And now we can change that. Remember that. If you guys decide, let's go with let's renovate homes and sell those homes, that's an eligible activity. If you decide there's plenty of homes out there that we can renovate and rent, we can do that too. It kind of depends on what the board, what direction the board wants to go. And there may be a point where we may have to change. Lot availability, believe it or not, is becoming a problem. And early on, when we took over this, looking at revitalization, some of these target neighborhoods, and we went into these target neighborhoods, there were tons of lots available. Well, they're not so much anymore. They were getting bought up. Private sector is involved, and when they get involved, they buy. We have one company from California. They went and bought 40 of those suckers. Man, they're just buying them up, and then they build and they sell. So anyway, it's a good program. I mean, I think we're all supportive of that.
Any other questions, feedback? No? Well, thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Well, then we'll move on to the closed session, item 6. Executive session under the provision of Government Code Title 5, Open Government Ethics, Subtitle A, Open Government Chapter 551, Open Meetings Subchapter D. Exceptions to requirements that meeting be open under the following sections: A, Section 551.071, consultation with attorney regarding affordable housing borrower delinquencies. B, Section 551.087, business prospect negotiations regarding A, Project Sienna, B, Project New Wave, C, Skyline Aviation, D, Project Monet, and E, occupational training facility at Mathis Field. It is 10:49 and we are in closed session.
Thank you.
Lunch next time.
Okay.
Okay.
We're back. Okay, it is 12:12, and we are back from closed session. Where's my agenda sheet? I lost my agenda.
Seven.
Maybe. Where are we? Yeah. Yeah, there it is. You took it from me. All right, here we go. So 7, back from closed session, item number 7, follow-up and administrative issues. A, consideration and possible actions of items discussed in closed session if needed. We don't have any. B, announcements and consideration of future agenda items. Do we have any?
I do have an item. I don't think it's for a full meeting of the board, but we discussed the possibility of some sort of a quarterly meeting where we would have a couple of board members present and maybe invite a couple of council members and then just go through and invite representatives from the chamber to kind of go through and talk about activities. What are they doing? What are we doing? That kind of thing. Are we ready to make that invitation and try to put something together? Are you ready to direct us to staff to try to make something like that happen and get that process started? By the way, I recommend it. It was very positive when we did it with the DMO. I mean, there were difficult topics that were covered, but they already bore fruit in yesterday's DMO presentation at council. I think it would bear fruit with us.
Those would be formal, like, so we'd have to put it on an agenda? or
No,
you're talking about
it
informal?
just, as long as we keep it under a quorum,
Got
both for you and for council, it's just more like steering and understanding. And so I recommend we give it a try. I know that I've seen at least individuals making a significant effort at diplomacy, and I think this is a step in that direction also.
Okay. Yeah, I'm forward with that. I know it probably, with everyone's challenging schedules, it'll probably have to be, a few months out or something, so we might as well get the ball rolling.
Do you have a firm idea of who you'd like to be at the meetings, or would you like a slate of 3 or 4 and the first 2 that accept are in? How would you like that? Do you want to designate 2 people now, or would you like us just to find a couple of people?
I think whoever is available, kind of, because it may be folks that end up repeating because, in terms of scheduling wise, what for our end, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Well, I know we've talked about Max's schedule, and he's busy, and so I know some of you are busy also, so.
Well, I think if we do it quarterly, we could, in the spirit of, cooperation, try to rotate that so that we don't, avoid a quorum, but everyone at some point participate. So I think we could just do it, the first one on a volunteer basis, depending on the date that comes up, and see who's available. And then for future ones, try to rotate it so that it's not the same people all the time. It's kind of rotation in and out from both boards.
So what I'm hearing is you want to be there for the easy meetings and put somebody else in for the difficult.
There you go.
Of course you heard that.
Depends on your definition of easy.
Part of the discretion allocated.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, we'll work on that.
All right, sounds good. Do we have any other?
I move to close.
Yes, I do.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Just going to mention, on February 28th, we're going to be hosting, SBDC is going to be hosting a retirement reception. It's a come and go, February 28th at 3 o'clock. I would encourage y'all to be there about 3, especially at 3:30.
That is
that's
Tuesday. I just want to make sure.
That is
the
Tuesday,
28th.
yes, for Dave's
3 p.m.
retirement.
Oh, and one quick question. I
Yes.
know we're coming up on the annual meeting for the board. Is that scheduled yet?
We're going to start working on that. As a matter of fact, this afternoon, I'm going to start working on that. So if that's what we need to do, we'll continue having that as scheduled.
Okay, 'cause I
And
think, I
what time
believe,
did you say the reception would be?
It begins at 3. It's a come and go, but I plan to do something around 3:30 for him.
For the annual meeting, would you like it to take the place of your regular meeting or be in addition to your regular meeting?
I think last time we had it in conjunction.
Yeah,
Correct.
could take
So
the
we did a
place
little
out.
official business and then we closed out, adjourned into a work session? We could do that.
I think this we did. I think we spoke about this a while back, and originally it was going to be delayed because we were going to wait, hoping that the executive director would be in place
That is correct.
to this, right? So I think we could, see how that process goes. You said we should know something before the next meeting on that process?
Hopefully, you bet.
Okay. Because that might be good if, depending on their bringing them up, tying them both in together. That's, if we can. Does that make sense? Is that all right? Okay. Do we have any other items? Anyone but Director Ceballos? Anyone else? Yeah. Okay.
Move to adjourn.
All right. We have a motion, Director Ceballos. Do we have a second?
I second.
Not all at once?
Everybody seconds.
All right, everybody seconds. Any public comment? No? No? Okay. Bueller? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Good meeting. Thank you, everybody.